the truth.
My fingers wrapped around the top of a cold metal chair to pull it away from the table. It made a soft scuffing that was only audible due to the stiff silence. Sitting down, I shuffled through the papers scattered across the table and matched the picture on the report to the man sitting across from me. Although the room was dark, only a failing overhead light to illuminate us, and with the door closed, the wall ceased to exist, extending forever into the darkness. The only points of reference for this man would be the light above us beaming down onto the matted gray table. There was also a two-way mirror on the wall directly behind me that concealed the first two officers behind it. First off, let me say I'm sorry for your loss. My words probably sound cold, but when you've been doing this for as long as I have, my condolences lose their heart. I kept reading over papers, feeling my eyes shift from one report to the other. Mr. Holloway, I want you to understand. Up front, you're our prime suspect. I continued as I refused to make eye contact with the only other person in the room. 4 bodies found at your house. Looked up briefly as I read the reports. The man was haggard and still. His eyes were dropped, and his hair was a mess of fluff. Between the two of us, I could hear small, constant creaks coming from our shifting and the flimsy chairs. Everything in the room was designed with the intention of me getting the answers I wanted. I had been called in when 4 bodies had been discovered in Mr. Holloway's apartment. All of them were family. All 4 missing large quantities of blood, and you were just out taking a walk. I looked up at him, finally getting a solid rundown of the man who nodded in reply, his breath in our cold confines visibly seeping from his mouth. I liked it. I liked to hear their heartbeat. "What luck for you!" I exclaimed. He was thrown off guard and looked up to me, my gaze. I would never hurt the... Miss Holloway began to speak, but when he swayed his body to the right to fix his posture, he cut himself off. For a moment, he became a statue, a falling one as he continued to lean further right. I could see, even in the dim light, a look of complete astonishment, perhaps an underlying fear that he was bubbling to the surface. "Mr. Holloway, I suggest you stay with me, or we're going to be here a while." His posture fixed the same look that was plastered all over his face. I could see a nervous crack forming behind his eyes. My nose twitched uncontrollably. I could also smell blood racing through him, and I knew it would be an easy confession. "It was you!" "It was you!" Holloway shouted, admittedly staringly as his eyes grew wide, not like he was looking at me. He was staring right through me at someone just behind me in that small room we were both crammed into. Turned slowly in my seat, cautiously listening for any threatening movements Holloway might make. When facing the two-way mirror, I was met with nothing. Just the reflection of the room and a now trembling Holloway. I couldn't help but let out a small chuckle as I shifted back, feeling the cold air press my skin as I faced the increasingly concerned man. "Look, I'm honestly getting hungry, Holloway." I leaned forward, pressing my forearms onto the table. Flashed a quick smile, revealing my pearly whites. "I don't have time to play games with you." Instead of responding, he just continued to move around like a boxer, trying to avoid a flurry of hits. His movements became so erratic. I thought if I let him go any longer, he'd have a seizure. "Please, get away from me," he stammered under his breath, but he wasn't talking to me, or at least it seemed that way. "Oh God, don't hurt me." His words were mixed by a layer of choked sorrow. "No one is gonna hurt you, Holloway. It's just me and you." I attempted to calm him, but I could hear the chains around his wrists rattling. I could feel the small tapping as they hit the table. Giving the room behind me one more glance, as I was getting irritated and my stomach was rumbling something awful. If you want to leave, I need a confession. I demanded to lean further in. If he had half the mind, he could have reached up and strangled me as we met eyes. I could tell all he wanted was to be out of the room. 4 bodies, drained of blood. How'd you do it, Holloway? He stammered. As I was leaning over, he could see right over my head and straight into the two-way mirror that he refused to take his eyes off. I poisoned them, and then I could smell blood with every breath. He had been breaking the skin of his lip with his teeth, over and over. I used a needle and pulled it out while they slept. Good. Now, say you killed him, and you'll never see my face again. I promise. I was only an inch away from his face. Hot breath pelted my chin, and the smell of sweat perforated my nostrils. I killed them, he stated. His words were stale and flat, but it was all I needed. Even Holloway seemed to relax as I rose from my chair and walked to the other side of the table. I stood behind him as we both stared into the mirror. One more time for the boys in the booth. Holloway twitched when he felt my fingers landing on his shoulder. His shaking had evolved into some sort of fantastical calm. I killed them, he reaffirmed. Relief washed over me. It's never been hard for someone like me to get a confession. I don't have to play the mean cop. All I gotta do is show up and be me. They confess to siphoning blood from their loved ones. The motive never really matters, and then we're good to go. They stay and talk to the cops as I leave to find my next meal. It's a really sweet deal. They never tell the truth, though. That they're always innocent. They never tell the officers what it is they saw in that room, or rather, what they didn't. Holloway certainly won't make a peep about it. I could see it in his eyes and hear it in his words. So right there on his face, reflected in the giant two-way mirror. Even at the end, he was desperately blinking in his eyes, as if it were some trick of the light, but no matter how hard he tried, he'd never find my reflection. Hello everyone, thank you for listening to tonight's story. If you did enjoy, please consider subscribing. That would help out the channel a lot. And liking the video. If you're listening to this on SoundCloud, then please consider liking the track to show your support for me and to show me that I can keep continuing this because you guys enjoy it. And if you're reading this on Reddit, then I don't know how you're listening to my voice right now. Alright. Have a good night.